Yo, yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Just Saying with your boy Sefa and your girl Myiuna. Now, we're so excited to introduce today's topic. So, Myiuna, why don't you give our listeners today's topic?
Guys, today we have decided to talk about something a little bit different, but for sure
Mm,
fun. Um, we are going to tell Tales of the Sea. Um,
beautiful name.
and so the Tales of the Seas is just basically like myths, stories, whether it be horror stories, fun stories, sad or beautiful stories about our cultures over across the islands. Because for me and Sefa, I know we personally have like a likening for knowing these
Mm,
stories or just like talking about the stories that we hear. And so we thought that it would be a fun idea to share the stories with you guys too, so you guys could like learn a bit more of where some of our beliefs come from, or just like another side um, that is rooted in our culture as a part of the root of our culture.
mm. Okay, so before we dig in, if you are watching, I hope you lock your windows and your doors and said your prayers because some of the stories are pretty, let's say, there's stories that will there's stories that will bring shivers to your body, or at least we hope so. Okay, so we're going to begin by telling some scary stories that maybe like our aunties or our parents have from their experiences living in the islands. Obviously, we know in the islands, the veil is very thin, and like what Muna said, we're naturally very spiritual people, and so it's no surprise that our people experience stuff like this. So let's begin. I only had like what four stories that I could remember that my auntie Seal would tell me. What about you?
I feel like there's a lot of stories. We grew up with these kind of stories. My grandma was the type to
Mm,
like say or tell us stories before we went to bed. Um, and she did that with all of us growing up. So like even though my time as a baby or as a child like passed, the ones younger than me, she would still tell stories to. So I still got to hear stories. Um,
mm.
but for the episode, I feel like man, there's way more that we're missing out on.
So as we said before, I think across the Pacific Islands, our people are very spiritual, and they're people of faith. And so I think when it comes to like superstitions or the paranormal, um, it like interconnects or intertwines with religion in a sense. So I actually have an interesting story about my auntie, and I call this story Auntie Seal in the Graveyard Party.
Mm.
Okay, now I think it was my Auntie Seal's auntie who passed away. So this was when she was a child or like a teenager, I think. And so they all slept together in the house one night, and then my auntie she woke up and she heard like people like shouting and cheering, kind of like having a party. Um, and then the next morning, she woke up and she asked my grandma, her mom, um, that she heard those sounds, yeah. And so my grandma then said to her, whenever someone dies or passes away in the family, and if you hear like cheering or like celebrating that comes from the site of the cemetery, that means the dead are like welcoming them into the other side.
That's
And
cool, eh? I find
yeah,
that very cool.
yeah, and so they went to check out the place where she died, and they actually found footsteps on her site.
Damn, that is an interesting story. That reminds me of a story that my grandma told about the Boko, his a guy named Boko and the mango tree. This
Mm,
one's a bit weird. I don't know how weird other scary stories are across the other islands, but um, there's a there's a mango tree um back in our village. Um, where a man named Boko had slit his tongue under. So
Ooh.
he was the outcast of the village, and people weren't very welcoming, I guess, of him. So he would go and stay under the lalamango, like under the mango tree. Um, and one day he sat under the mango tree, and he partook of the mango, and he immediately felt guilty because the mango tree wasn't his, and because he's already used to feeling like an outcast, um, he thought that like it was a major sin for him to touch the mango tree or just eat the mango tree. So when he partook of the mango fruit, he immediately felt guilty because he was eating from a mango tree that he knew didn't belong to him.
Mm.
And so he thought that he deserved some sort of punishment.
Mm.
And so what he did was he slit his tongue under the mango tree, and he eventually died. But the tale is about the mango tree and Boko. They say that at nighttime, um, he like dwells by the tree. Apparently, when you like stand from the road, because the mango tree is not surrounded by any street lights or any formal light,
Mm.
you can't really picture, you can't really like see the mango tree, or you can't really see the mango or the color of the tree or anything. It's just like a silhouette kind of thing from afar. But apparently, on the mango, you can see um, like a tongue on the mango. So they say it's like the tongue from the mango. So you can see it like it looks like that's like the mango. I don't know how it looks like, but it's like a mango, and
Mm.
then something sticking out of it. Maybe that's what it will look like, but just
Oh.
doesn't look like a mango. Um, and if you partook of the mango tree in the daytime, um, Boko was to come after you. And we know, like with the Tongan culture, and I'm pretty sure with the other cultures, the idea of being possessed, or being like, I guess, touched or accompanied by a spirit is actually like kind of normal. Um,
Mm.
it's not like a shocker kind of thing. Like there's so many people in the islands who have been gifted um, with like hands. It's such a Tongan, it's such a Tongan thing.
Mm.
It's just like you have the gift of hands, or like where you're able to like massage or pota, or in the Tongan word faito'o. What's faito'o in English?
I don't know. It's some sort of like medicinal. I don't know.
Yeah, like medicine or like this cure. There's certain people who are taught like and given this gift like spiritually handed down by
Mm.
descent. Like you had to be in the family bloodline to receive this kind of gift to be able to treat um these cases like being possessed or being touched by the spirit or being followed by one. But I find it very interesting that like our people have normalized or like are not really like shocked when things go on, like when stories like this happen, or when anyone is like, I don't know, being touched by a
Yeah.
demon or a spirit, whether it be good or bad.
Yeah. Mm.
Interesting. Huh?
I think I remember my mum telling me, she was like, oh, the reason why, like back home in Tonga, the reason why they're able to experience um more like paranormal stuff or see ghosts and spirits and devils and all that stuff is because the island is very small, and so when the people pass away, it's like the spirits just stay on that small island. And like
Mm,
as compared to when we live here in Australia, New Zealand, or any other big country, um, it's not common for you to kind of experience something paranormal or something to that level.
yeah.
So yeah, I think I have another story that my auntie told me, and it's about Liahona High School. And so the girls' dorm, they're famous for having a lot of scary experiences in their dorm. And there's two I actually have. I remembered one. So the first one is called the Red Stiletto.
Mm,
So I think one night a bunch of girls in the dorm room they were sleeping, and then one of the girls woke up because she heard footsteps in the hallway of the dorm. And so when she went to check the hallway to see like if it was a person or something, she saw stilettos, like red stilettos, and they were walking in the hallway. But the thing is, you could see the feet with the stilettos, but you couldn't see the body. So it was just the feet and the stilettos walking, yeah,
Oh,
in the hallway. And a lot of people believe that it's there's this famous spirit or this famous devil that's called Fele Huluni or Fele Huhuni. Remember her?
Pelehuhune.
Yeah. Yeah, so in Tonga,
We've heard it.
she's a really well known like spirit that dwells in Tonga, and so a lot of people have experiences with her. Um, I think another one is about a girl who slept with her hair down. I don't know if that's like a thing that Tongan people believe in, but at least for my parents, they said for girls to never let their hair down when they sleep before they go to sleep. So one of the students in their honor, um, she was brushing her hair in the middle of the night, and she didn't tie her hair up when she went to sleep, and so by the time she woke up the next morning, all her hair was like cut off. And so she asked everyone around, like the girls, if it was some sort of prank or something, and they're like, "Oh no, we didn't do that. Like none of us would ever do that to you." And then so they were probably like, "Oh, it was probably Fele, Huhuni who came to cut your hair, cause she had long hair as well."
I knew the story of Pelehuhune. One of the things that she's capable of doing on the other side.
Mm.
Um, is there's this main road somewhere in Tonga. There's this main road where a lot of accidents happen like
Mm.
randomly on this main road, and the road is not a difficult road. Like it's not curvy. It's nothing. It's just a road. Um,
Mm.
but a lot of accidents are caused on the main road, and so people for a while have been trying to figure out why these accidents are caused on just that road, like because it's so normal. It's just like it's not. There's no way you could possibly have like unless you were like speeding and then like oncoming traffic. But in this sense, it was just like a normal road. And the
Mm.
accidents that are caused on these roads was like, as if there was like a pole or like a curve, or just there was just an unexplained reason to why accidents were happening on the main road. Someone had actually went at nighttime on the road and drove slowly on the road because if there's no physical or like visible to the eye problems, then obviously to them they figured that it was like a spiritual problem or
Mm.
like a devolo situation, as they would say. And so a certain resident went by the road and was driving as slow as he could to like pass through the road. um, and a lot of the accidents were caused at nighttime. In the daytime, people would come by the road and be like, "Oh, that's when they discovered the accident." And so the certain someone like drove um, down this road and then was approached by a woman. Was approached by a woman, and the woman was like seemed to be hitchhiking. And so he pulled up to her and he was like, "Hey, do you need to go anywhere?" And she was like, "I need to get to Uta." So she needed to get to town, and it was dark. And so she got in the car and he was going. And as he was driving, he realized that Uta was back that way.
Mm.
And he was just going that way. And so he realized that she didn't say, like, "Oh, turn back," or like, "This is not the way." And he started to get suspicious. So when he looked at her, he couldn't see her face. Like, he couldn't really, like,
Oh
make out her
God.
face. He couldn't really make out her face. And he knew. So he knew that it was Ewolo,
Mm.
or like a spirit. So he told her to get out, um, or to get out of the car. And like, I think with certain spirits, when you tell them stuff like that, they actually like make a move, and they like, they don't let you get away with it. But somehow it's just like Felihuni, um, just got out of the car, like just got out of the car. And then he
Mm.
continued his way down the road and he made it to the other side. And that's when the tale started that Felibuhuni was actually the cause of the accidents, that she would hop into the cars and then purposely cause them to, I don't know, sway the car and then
Mm.
get into these accidents, which caused a lot of deaths down that road.
Wow. I mean, I heard like Felehuhuni, she can like come in many forms. Like she
Mm.
can turn into male or female. She can even turn into animals as well. And I think one of the most common things she does is she kind of like lures, like what you said when we were talking about it. She like lures men or something,
Yeah.
and she kind of possesses them, and then she goes like jump off a cliff or something. Like she makes them jump off a cliff and kill themselves.
Mm.
So yeah, she's a very prominent spirit or a popular spirit in Tonga that a lot of people talk about.
And that was because, like, well, as we were saying, the tale is that she was a witch, hey, before
Yes, yes, she
she had.
was a witch. So she actually came from like an ordinary family, and so what would happen is her parents they would go into town to have meetings, and then she would come later on. But every time she came to the meetings, she'd have a different hairstyle,
Mm.
and so the parents would ask her like, "How do you like change your hairstyle so quickly?" And so what they decided to do for the next meeting is that they were gonna trick her and tell her we're gonna go to the meeting, but instead they were gonna stay back and see what she, how she would change her hair. And so what happened was, they told her, and then they hid behind. I think at the time they didn't have doors. It's like a something made out of hay or whatever. So they hid behind the curtain to see how she could change her hair. And then they found out that she was a witch because what she did was she took her head off her head, she put it on her lap, and she would like do her hair by herself. She would like, make it into a different hairstyle all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think in that time, when there's like a devil or a witch in your family, your whole family, including the witch, gets killed. And so what they tried to do was, out of her safety and their own safety, um, they like put her on a boat and they sent her out to sea
Mm.
to go somewhere. So, yeah. So I don't know. She probably died out there, and she's probably came
Yeah.
back to the island to want everyone. So yeah.
That would make sense then, eh? Why she's like all over the place and why she does
Mm,
she does.
yeah. Uh, there's a lot of stories in Vava'u. I know Vava'u and what's the other place known for being haunted?
um,
Vava'u and was it Niwa or something? I don't know.
Niwa?
Was it?
Yeah, Niwa?
Yeah, Niwa. Yeah. So there's this place. I don't know if you know the village. It's called like Na'a or something in
Mm.
Vava'u or
Mm.
somewhere in Tonga. And so the reason why the village has that name is because word goes around that at night time, if you hear a baby crying, it's Ana. So the name of the baby is Ana. And Na'a, which means like calm down or like quiet down. It's basically the mom trying to quiet down Ana. But if you hear that sound of the baby at nighttime, and if you look outside, some people have said that they've seen the mom with baby Anna, and Anna's crying, but the mom has Anna's head in her what's it called? Like in the headlock. And so yeah, and so she just walks around the streets at night, and they say that a lot of families they don't like leave their curtains or windows open, and they always leave their doors locked like during those
Yeah.
nights because if Anna sees you as she's walking through the window, she would like come stand at the window for the whole night, and the baby will just be crying the whole time.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, there's like the things that they tell us not to do at nighttime. There's
Mm,
quite a few of those things, hey. I remember
yeah.
I slept over at my grandma's sister's house, and my auntie had come home and she told me to sleep with her, that I wasn't allowed to sleep on my own. They also tell you that you should be very aware when it's your first time in Tonga.
Mm,
Um, just they were just very careful with me and what I did at nighttime. And so at nighttime, I wasn't allowed to play outside. I wasn't like allowed to go sit outside on the porch, um, and I wasn't allowed to sleep by myself. So
mm,
I slept with her in her room. And this one particular night, it was dark. Like she had turned off all the lights and everything was just dark, like pitch black dark in the room.
mm,
And me, I'm like already normally a person who can't even sleep on my own. Like me right now, for those who don't know, I'm in quarantine. But,
Right.
but so how I fall asleep over here is like I have one of my friends like always on the phone with me,
Mm,
and then when I knock out, that's when I knock out, like, but I can't sleep by myself. So I think it's a thing ever since I was small. Anyways, I would sleep with her and it was pitch black. And this one particular night, I woke up, I was awoken in the nighttime and I couldn't go back to sleep. So I just laid there and just, it was really dark and I was scared. Because you don't really have blankets because it's quite hot.
mm,
And so, I'd feel comfortable if I covered myself in something, but because it was hot, the room didn't have blankets.
mm,
And my auntie was asleep. And so I like kind of woke her up. I tried to like wake her up, but she wasn't waking up. And then all of a sudden I had this thought that like, is that even your auntie? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why, but I was thinking like, oh my gosh, is that even your auntie? So I decided not to
mm,
touch anybody or like feel around because I have heard other stories of like things like that happening. Like, you'll hear someone talk to you from another room and you'll think that it's your sister, and then your
mm,
sister ends up walking through the door like half an hour later and saying, I just got back, those kind of stories.
mm.
Anyways, I started to call out to
Damn.
her and she was responding. That was a knock.
I thought that was scary. That's scary. I
Um,
got scared.
there was, so, anyways, I started calling her name out. Her name was Myiuna. So I was like, Myiuna, Myiuna, Myiuna. And eventually she responded. She was like, are you okay? And I was like, can we turn on the light? I don't know where in her brain she thought it was okay to tell me, oh, it's best to leave the light off. Don't turn on the light because that's when the devils will come by the window and see that you're awake. And I was like, why would you say that?
Mm.
Why would you tell me that? I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
even
yeah.
more scared than I was before knowing that. And it was because I slept next to the window.
Mm,
And the window was like right above my body when I laid there. And so I just had to like suck it up and like a little bit cry myself to sleep. Um,
wow.
because of the certain things we weren't allowed to do at night. And I hadn't known that. So when I woke up the next morning, I remember we were talking about it. She was telling me like, yeah, you turn on your light at nighttime, like in the very late hours of the night. In her village, it's like possible for spirits to like dwell upon the household,
Mm.
like around the household, and just wait for you to, I guess, step up.
Damn,
Yeah.
that's crazy. I mean, I guess this is the perfect segue to move into superstitions because I feel like superstitions also connects with horror stories, like a lot of paranormal experiences.
Mm.
So following along from what Myiuna said about like stuff that our people believe we should do at night. Have you ever heard of the superstition where if you like whistle or if you like laugh at nighttime, we call it like kataloi. If you like
Mm.
fake laugh or fake cry, like you would hear someone like imitating your same voice back at you. And so what they say is that if you do that, and if you hear yourself coming from outside, it means a devil was like imitating your voice. That's something I heard as well.
I have this thing for trying to prove certain things wrong.
Mm.
Um, so at nighttime lately, especially after my mission, I would purposely whistle at nighttime. I would purposely do this. I would purposely whistle at nighttime, because our religion, our faith, our church Sefer like teaches us other things that you need
Mm.
not about whistling at night. So why do I,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
say that I whistle at night because you shouldn't play with those kind of beliefs from Tonga. But
Mm.
I've been whistling at night lately, and I sometimes like feel good about it because nothing's happened to me, and I'm just yeah, like I can whistle. But that's just I think that's because I'm in a motherland, like I'm in New Zealand,
Yeah.
um, whereas if it was in Tonga, I'm pretty sure something would happen. There's another story. I remember I have a few cousins who went to a graveyard to visit a family member, and it was nighttime, and they decided to have graveyard hops. So what they would do is like stand at one on one side of like an aisle, graveyard aisle, and they will like race to the other side by hopping on the grave.
Oh, they've
I don't
got
know. I don't know.
guts.
Yeah, I don't know who does that. I don't know where they like
Damn.
what kind of movie they watched and they saw that they're allowed to do that. Anyways, they were warned. Their parents were like afar, sitting by their family member gravestone, and called out to them and told them like stop playing, stop jumping on the graveyards of the people and come back. And they didn't listen, so they decided to like do it. And so they hopped one into the other, and they like did that constantly throughout the night. And when they had went home, she woke up the next morning and her mouth was like hippa, like crooked.
Oh, I've heard a lot of those stories, yeah.
Her mouth shifted like literally hippa.
Mm.
Um, and her parents, like, when they saw her, they were like, I told you, like, what did I tell you? You probably jumped on someone's grave and they didn't like it and they slapped you, like they slapped your mouth.
Mm.
And that's what happened. There are a lot of causes of these, like, when you break these certain beliefs or like go against it, unexplained things happen to you like that, like the shift of the mouth. Like it wasn't a sickness, or it wasn't like a physical thing that you did to like have caused the mouth to shift. But it's like common with those other stories, like consequences of doing certain things at nighttime or just anything in Tonga. Those are the kind of like physical consequences you have to like suffer from because they don't listen and they like to do that to us, I guess. I don't know.
That kind of reminds me of like that superstition where like our parents teach us not to point at like a cemetery or graveyard site because then like the spirits will come follow you. And so I think it was my auntie's friend, she actually drove past one, and she was pointing but she was laughing at the same time for some reason. And that's kind of like a sign of disrespect or something, right, to the spirits, I heard. So the next morning she had the same thing that your cousin had. Her lip was like full on to the side when she woke up, and like she had to do like fight or something to kind of, I don't know, put it back to normal. So there's a lot of superstitions that I didn't even know myself were true, and I wouldn't even dare myself to try it out.
Definitely.
But it's just something that we've all been raised up on. But I think it's a good thing because I think those superstitions are more like respecting the dead and like letting them rest in peace in a way. That's if you have sleep paralysis or like if you wake up and you feel that you're not able to move or not breathe, it means like some sort of ghost has like touched you physically. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I feel like my experiences with sleep paralysis, and I know a lot of us out there have experienced sleep paralysis. Like, and there's different like explanations or reasons to why you go through sleep paralysis. But I feel like because of our culture, there's a different like, there's a different reason or like.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a scientific reason for it, but in our culture it feels like it's like a more spiritual sense. Yeah, that's
So,
true.
like Safa was saying, I had like a certain. I'll never repeat that year again. I think it was the year 2016, 15 to 16. But for a whole year, and I know some of you, like, a few people know this about, but for a whole year, I had sleep paralysis and I was experiencing sleep paralysis or just certain experiences at nighttime that was like, I don't know, quite scary and really not painful, but, I was haunted by it. Like, and I remember my first experience, I was sleeping, I shared a room with my sister and it was the biggest room in the house, and she slept on one corner of the room, and I slept on the other corner of the room. And so if we were to like get up from our bed, we would be facing each other. It was like that, like we'd wake up and look at each other. And so this one night I was falling asleep, and I like, lucid dreaming. I was half awake, half asleep. And that's because like I was aware that my body was asleep, but I could see what was going on. Like, Anyways, I started hearing these like voices.
Mm.
I started hearing voices like people saying, "Oh, you tell her. Who's gonna tell her? You tell her. You tell her." This was before my mission, by the way, so I was quite
Mm.
like youngish. I wasn't 18. Anyways, you tell her. You tell her. And when I had like looked properly to see where the voices were coming from, so in the corner of my eye, I could like see like a mist of darkness. It was just like this black shadow, but it was vibrating like loud. The noise that was coming from the shadow was just like this loud buzz.
Yeah.
And I laid there, and so it gradually made its way towards me. And the closer it got to me, the louder the buzzing was, like
Mm-hmm.
um, the vibrating. And so it went down to where my feet were, and it slowly started to come up upon me, on top of me. Um, and like we all know, sleep paralysis, you're paralyzed. You can't move, and your body can't do what you want it to do. So I tried to like
Mm.
move or to break out of like what the position that I was in, stuck and paralyzed. Um, and so then I tried to yell out to my sister. And because I was like, I was awake, I could see what was going on. I was aware of what was going on. I couldn't move. I tried to yell out to my sister, and I knew she was in the room, but because I couldn't like speak, I could faintly hear my voice like yelling beans, beans. It was like that, like beans, beans. That silent, that quiet,
Mm.
beans, beans. Um, and when I'd seen that and noticed that she wasn't responding, I was scared because I slowly started to stop breathing. Like it was hard to breathe. I wasn't panicking or anything. I was just like scared. Um, and I couldn't breathe. And so I thought I'd try to like yell out to my dad. And my dad at nighttime, he's not like he's a very deep sleeper. Like if you were to sneak out, you'd sneak out. But then again,
Mm.
if you were to call for help, or he's like maybe it's just a parental like instinct kind of thing.
Mm.
But I tried to call out for my dad, and for a split minute I did. Like I broke out of the whole paralyzed thing and yelled
Mm.
out like I was just like dad, and then back to that position again, back to lock mode. Um, but that one call, my dad did hear it, and so he busted the door. He came and he busted the door and he turned the light on. The minute he like busted the door and turned the light on, everything was like out.
Wow.
Like it snapped out, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I was so scared. I was scared for my life. I'm pretty sure everyone is like, deathbed when you have sleep paralysis the first time. And I remember my sister had woken up, and I was just like crying, and I was like, what the heck was that? And trying
Mm.
to explain to my dad what was going on because he busted through the door and something was happening. Um, and I remember just a fun fact about me, but I remember my sister. I remember saying like, "Man, didn't you hear me? Like, couldn't you hear me yelling out your name? Like, couldn't you hear me like saying your name to come and help me?" And she was like, "I heard it, but I thought you were dreaming." So, anyways, that's my sister. And then my sister went to the kitchen, and my dad went to the kitchen to make me a Milo. And I could hear, and as I was sitting there trying to like calm myself down and just breathe and take in what the heck just happened,
Mm.
I could hear my sister saying like, "Man, she's dumb, man. She's crazy. Like, who the heck sounds insane. She sounds crazy. The things that she's explaining. She's so stupid. She's so silly." And I had heard my dad like tell her to stop. Like, don't say that about your sister. Um, your sister's dumb. Like he would say, "Mamaki." Like your sister's the one that goes through those kind of things. Like a lot of those things happen to like me out of
Mm.
all my siblings. And it was true. Like there were certain things that happened in my childhood and in my upbringing that were not like the reason for it was not known. Um, and to my parents, it was obviously like, oh, she's that child.
Mm.
But so that was my experience of my first experience of sleep paralysis. But then for a whole year, it continued. I realized that the more I feared it, the more it would happen.
Mm.
Um, And so I always had a friend, like there were certain people who would call me at night just to make sure, like wait for me to fall asleep, like wait for me to fall asleep, and then they were able to like leave, um, or go sleep. And I honestly, those friends were so loyal, waiting for me because my sister ditched me and she went to America, so I had no one to wake me up in the middle
Mm.
of the night because it was a habit for
Yeah.
her. Like whenever she heard me helplessly call out her name, she would immediately know what's happening and click that I'm in a sleep paralysis, and she'd like get up and shake my leg, like, or like move a part of my body, because whenever that happened, I was out of sleep paralysis, like I was out of that mood. But yeah, that happened for a whole year, and I got to a point where I eventually was used to it. Like when it happened, I'm just like, oh my gosh, here we go. And
That's
yeah,
crazy. What the hell?
that was my sleep paralysis.
Man.
I don't know, but I don't think that's like I don't think the reason behind that was like a scientific one. I actually think that there were certain things that I shouldn't have been doing, and I don't know if this makes sense to us Tomans or just to me, but my ancestors were pretty mad about it, and so they were there to tell me what's up and tell me to like
Yeah.
stop it.
Yeah, when Mino told me, I was like, damn, and you had to go through that for a whole year.
Mm.
I remember having only like a few experiences of sleep paralysis, but in every single experience, like my eyes would be awake, like what you said, like you're kind of awake but asleep at the same time,
Mm.
like you're aware. And in each of this experience, I would see something like brush by my side or like in the corner of my eye. There was always something there, and like what Myiuna said, I don't think it's scientific, at least for us.
But yeah, just from the sleep paralysis experience, and also like the explanation that the world has of sleep paralysis, the cause of it,
Mm,
I think it's like a common thing that like scientists do, or like the world tries to find a certain explanation to, even spiritual things that are not in their power.
mm,
They're always trying to find a reason or like a physical explanation to why those things happen. But obviously to us, there's like a different way we believe in things that are not in our power that are done. Um, and yeah, I just feel like with the Polynesians or with the islanders, like we had mentioned earlier, Sefa, because we are such spiritually rooted people, the veil across the islands and across the Pacific is very thin. The veil of spirituality is like very thin between us and
mm.
the other side. Um,
Yeah,
that's how things are like visible to us, or like we're able to experience these kind of weird, um,
yeah,
yeah.
and it's not something like there's always like a meaning. We always put a meaning behind it, like it must have happened for a reason. But
Always
I
a reason.
think like most people like see it as like, oh my gosh, it's the devil, they're trying to possess me, I want to die and all that stuff, like stop following me. But I think for us, there's a meaning behind it, like there must be something happening in your life, or maybe an ancestor is trying to send you a message or something along the lines of that. But unfortunately, we are coming to the end of this episode. This isn't the only episode we're going to do on Tales of the Sea. We will be continually releasing episodes in the weeks to come and in the near future. So we will be asking actually you guys to share with us some of your own personal experiences that you've had, whether it be superstitions or scary stories that you've heard from your parents or whoever, or even your own stories as well. So keep an eye out for that. But other than that, thank you so much for listening to our episode. As always, I will never stop saying it as well. We thank you guys for continuing to support and listen to our podcast. If you are a new listener to our podcast, we hope that you loved this first episode. And if you want to hear our other episodes, they're on the link in our bio on our Instagram page at Just Saying Podcast with a double T. Once again, thank you guys so much, and we will catch you next time.
Ciao.